Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of What in the World is Going On. I'm your host, Brad Hurst. If you have been with us these last few episodes, you know that we are actually considering the passage in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, where we're told concerning the day of the Lord and our gathering together unto him, that we are not to be concerned about that. That day will not take place until there come a falling away first, which I think is already underway, as I mentioned in our first video, and also the man of sin be revealed. And we've been concentrating in the last 3 or 4 videos on the man of sin. We've gone into Isaiah, we've gone into Ezekiel, we've gone into Daniel as well. Last few videos, we've been looking in Daniel chapter 11, looking specifically at a person known as the King of the North, starting in verse 21, and then continuing all the way to the end, connecting that with the resurrection as seen in Daniel chapter 12. Before we get going into this section right here, it's going to be a very short lesson here today. I want to talk about something that takes place quite often when we hear about news coming out of the Middle East, specifically with regard to Syria and actions taking place in Syria. Oftentimes when we see bombings taking place in Syria, or Russians involved in Syria, or Turks involved in Syria, or Iranians involved in Syria, or Israel involved in Syria, all the celebrity prophecy preachers get out there, start talking about the war of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39. Personally, I think that's a grave mistake. When you look at that passage of scripture, you clearly see that it's talking about the final battle between God, or with God and enemies of God coming against Israel, after which Israel repents as a nation and the millennial temple is opened up. I think it's really difficult to actually make a fit stating that Gog, as many people like to say, that Gog is actually referring to Russia, all right? I think that's a real problem. There are a lot of problems with that, but I want to put one out there that I think is probably the most difficult for the Gog-Russia scenario to overcome, and that's actually found in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 17. In fact, in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 17, this is what we're told. It says, "Thus saith the Lord God, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them." Now, if you're going to be looking for this to be this Gog scenario, what you have got to do is you have to go into the prophets that wrote prior to Ezekiel, and go find some connection between Gog and those prophets and Russia. And I think you're going to you're going to be hard pressed. In fact, a lot of people aren't aware of that verse. Okay, when you bring it up to them, they kind of give you the deer in the headlights. And what Ezekiel is stating here is that this person, Gog, I have spoken of in the prophets prior to the writing of the book of Ezekiel. So if you're going to do that, then you're going to need to look at this list of prophets and go in there and find your Russian connection. Jonah, Joel, Amos, Hosea, Isaiah, Micah, Nahum, Zephaniah, Habakkuk, and Jeremiah. I think that you could be hard-pressed looking at this list or that list of prophets and finding yourself a Russian Gog connection. All right? We're looking for somebody that, according to Ezekiel, verse 17, God has been talking about since the prophet started speaking. All right? And that they spoke over many years regarding this person. So I challenge you to go and try to make that connection. I don't think you're going to be able to do it. So, but there is a war that we have been talking about that I think is approaching. I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon, but I do believe it is approaching. It's a war, as we have mentioned in previous videos, between the King of the North and the King of the South. We have made the case that the King of the North is specifically referring to Turkey, and the King of the South is specifically referring to Egypt. Now, this is one of the things that we can look geopolitically that would sort of kind of herald the nearness of the rapture, not the war of Gog and Magog, but the war between Egypt and Turkey. Now, there might be some other wars that take place as well, and I think that there indeed might be some things with relating to Israel, but specifically here, we're told that the war between Turkey, king of the north, and Egypt, king of the south, is a indicator of the nearness of the resurrection or the rapture. That's why we have this section, Daniel 11:21 through 45, followed up by Daniel 12, because at the time of the rise of the king of the north and this big conflict taking place, at that time we see that we're told that Michael the archangel is going to stand up, and those who are sleeping in the dust are going to be raised up, and those who are alive are going to be delivered, everyone whose name is found written in the book. So what we want to do is we want to do what we can to be diligent to watch for these things so that we can watch and pray that we'd be counted worthy to escape. So why this war between Egypt and Turkey? Well, the scriptures don't tell us why, but there's a little bit of history right here, more recent history. Back in 2011, when the Arab Spring took place, the government of Egypt collapsed. And you had a gentleman by the name of Morsi, who basically became president of Egypt, and he was a big supporter. In fact, he actually was part of what's known as the Muslim Brotherhood. And this Arab Spring collapse that took place really did so at the hands of the king of the north, or the person that we know today as Erdogan, president of Turkey. I think at the time he would have been prime minister. However, about a year or so after Morsi became president, the military stepped in and overthrew him, and a person by the name of Sisi became president of Egypt. And Erdogan stepped in and asked to be able to retrieve all of the basically Muslim Brotherhood people who had been put in jail by Sisi, and Sisi refused to do that. And to this day, even Morsi is still in prison, and this has really upset President Erdogan. But in the process of all this going on, Erdogan has gone in, he's made the necessary alliances, as mentioned in the last video. He's made alliances with Libya, he's made alliances with Ethiopia. And specifically with Ethiopia, one of the things that he's done is he's been involved in building a dam on what's on the headwaters or the upper waters of the Nile. And there's a problem that we have with this for Egypt, is because Egypt, as seen here in this picture here, Egypt is a country that totally depends on the Nile River. Its entire population, probably 99% of its population, exists in the Nile Delta region or on either side of the banks of the Nile River. Dry up the Nile River and you dry up Egypt altogether. They are heavily dependent upon the Nile River. Now, what has happened is down inside of Ethiopia, there has been a dam, a project being built in part by China, in part by the Turks, and you see it here in this picture. It is called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, and Ethiopia is doing this under the auspices of being able to develop its economy further and for hydroelectric power, and also for farming and irrigation and what have you. The problem is that there's a dispute as to what this dam might do to the economy of Egypt. And so of recent, the president of Egypt, you can see him here in this slide right here, Sisi, Abdel al-Sisi, he went to the UN just recently, and he made a big deal about this dam. In fact, in the past, he has stated and even said that military options regarding this dam are on the table if Ethiopia doesn't stop building this dam. And here is what he has said in the most recent meeting with the UN. This is found in Al Monitor, September 25th, 2021. It says Egypt makes its case at the UN as Ethiopia goes on defensive over Tigray. Okay, Tigray is the region where this dam is at, but also Tigray is a region where Ethiopia is at war with the population there, and that population is vehemently Coptic Christian, and they are the guardians of the Ark of the Covenant. So A lot of information with that found in some other videos regarding Isaiah 18 and what have you. Might want to go and have a look at that. So this is what the article says. In a sharply worded speech to the UN General Assembly this week, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi called out Ethiopia for its clear intransigence and unjustified rejection of international diplomacy over the dispute of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, and warned that this represents a grave threat to the security and stability of the entire region. Egypt relies on the Nile for over 90% of its water and has sought an internationally mediated agreement with Ethiopia to ensure that Egypt's water supply is not reduced by the GERD. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia has so far resisted international mediation on the GERD, claiming the dam is a sovereign matter and that Egypt's concerns are overblown. Sudan backs Egypt's position on the Nile as well. The world recognizes the risks of collision. On September 15th, the UN Security Council issued a statement calling on the three parties to resume negotiations mediated by the African Union, or the AU. So, is there a war coming? Is it Gog and Magog? Is that the war that's directly connected to the rapture and resurrection? Or is there a war coming between the king of the north and the king of the south? As we have looked at in previous videos, we see that Turkey is in the position of fulfilling much of what we see in Daniel chapter 11, verses 21 through 45, with its alliances with Libya, its alliances with Ethiopia, its ability to spread wealth and riches throughout the entire region, its ability to destabilize through infiltration and what have you, but specifically its shall we say, its opposition to Egypt and the conflict that appears to be rising between the king of the north and the king of the south. And this is the specific conflict that is directly connected to the resurrection in Daniel chapter 12. So I think we need to really start calling into question some of these celebrity Bible prophecy teachers, these celebrity pastors, these Jack Hibbs, these Amir Sarfadis, Don Stewarts, John Markell, and what have you. I think they're sincere, but they got us looking at the wrong war. Okay, none of them are talking about this war with Egypt and Turkey, Egypt and the king of the north in Daniel chapter 11. None of them are. All right. So what we need to do is we need to start calling these people to account, and we need to start having a biblical eschatology. We want to be as broad and as narrow as the scriptures are. If the scriptures are pointing us towards a war between Egypt and Turkey as the leading indicator, then what we see here developing on the world's stage right now, we can begin to see the day approaching. So I want to encourage you unto love and to good works. As we see that day approaching, be involved in your local church, even if you don't get to do anything, you're sat on. You want to be the go-to person that they go to when these things start to take place. So that's it for today. God bless. Have a good day, and thank you for your time.